America's public enemy number one.
Drug use will no longer be tolerated.
Marijuana leads to money, leads to greed, leads to violence.
In 1971, US President Richard Nixon coined the phrase the war on drugs. And for the 40-plus years since, it's been the goal of politicians around the world to destroy the trade in illegal narcotics.
It's time! It's showtime!
Police departments fight the war every day.
Put your hands up!
Lay down. Lay down.
Police, search warrant!
When we fight against drugs, we fight for the souls of our fellow Americans.
Get down! Get down!
Let's take a look at New York City. Since Michael Bloomberg has been mayor, police have spent 1 million man-hours working 440,000 arrests for, get this, marijuana possession. That's a lot of police busting parties instead of tracking down violent criminals.
The drug war is a perfect continuing example of why we will never win the war on terrorism, because it captures the ineffectiveness of the U.S. government, and it captures the fact that it's being used against poor people.
The war on drugs discriminates along lines of both skin color and money. Recent figures show that African Americans make up 13% of the US population. However, they comprise 45% of people in prison for drugs violations. And since Ronald Reagan introduced mandatory minimum sentences, federal drug sentences have been 49% higher for black people than white.
All these Americans that we don't need anymore, the factories are closed, we don't need them, you know, the textile mills, they're gone, GM is closing plants. We don't need these people. They're extra Americans, we don't need them. Let's just get rid of the bottom 15% of the country. Let's lock them up. In fact, let's see if we can make money off locking them up in the short term.
My government says we're fighting a heroic war against drugs and the war against people who use drugs. And frankly, a lot of them are just going to have to be locked up.
Extraordinary numbers of people are in prison because of drugs, yet it is not a place to get drug treatment.
These people are wrecking our society.
Secondly, ostracism. Society learns to hate drug users.
If you're a casual drug user, you're an accomplice to murder.
You apply special laws to them that don't apply to others.
Now, all of a sudden, these people who've previously just been identified as drug users become criminals.
If you break the law, you no longer have a home in public housing.
The ultimate effect is isolation, being cut off from mainstream society.
All of us agree that the gravest domestic threat facing our nation today is drugs.
The way to take a problem and make it a huge problem is first you ask the wrong question, and then you feed us the wrong answer.
Who's responsible? Let me tell you straight out. Everyone who uses drugs, everyone who sells drugs, and everyone who looks the other way.
Harlem in the 1970s, an urban war zone with heroin pushers and junkies on nearly every corner. A world where street gangs control the distribution of drugs and kill in the name of commerce.
The policy they have in place is not effective. It's a failure, and most people recognize that in this country.
Drugs are menacing our society. They're threatening our values and undercutting our institutions. They're killing our children.
In response, President Reagan launches a series of offensives against smuggling in the Caribbean. The cartels shift to routes through Central America, where the US is forced to turn a blind eye to its regional Cold War allies, who are profiting from the trade.
The war on drugs has turned drug users into criminals, while producers have become extremely wealthy people.
In the late 1960s, Ike was in the U.S. Army stationed in Thailand as part of the American war effort in Vietnam. Atkinson earned the nickname Sergeant Smack when he began smuggling heroin from the vast poppy fields of Thailand back to Frank and the Country Boys. The method was innovative, to say the least. Using connections on Army bases in Vietnam, Atkinson arranged to have the heroin placed secretly in the coffins of dead American GIs.
In 1986, on American TV, we were all being fed a steady diet of
We're taking down the surrender flag that has flown over so many drug efforts. We're running up a battle flag.
This scourge will stop.
But regrettably, back in Central America and in the jungle,
I remember down in Central America, we were refueling planes full of cocaine coming into the U.S., and it was a CIA operation being run by the White House.
It's very important for the American taxpayer to understand that Afghanistan was producing virtually no heroin under the Taliban and is now responsible for 80% of the heroin coming to the United States and the Western countries.
Now, we invaded Afghanistan right after 9/11, secured the country in November. Just by coincidence, the planting season for the opium poppy is November. We secured the country just in time to release a whole bunch of opium warlords for prison. It was in the news.
Well, drug money could soon be funding Al-Qaeda and other terror groups.
These beautiful-looking flowers are fueling some ugly addiction and terrorism.
When you've taught everybody how to make money with hard drugs, what are they supposed to do? Stop?
Police don't bother them. The U.S. military has other priorities.
Criminalizing people for minor offenses and helping to perpetuate an increasingly unequal society doesn't get to you. How about the economic argument? On a state and federal level combined, the US spends $40 billion a year on the war on drugs. In total, they've spent more than $1 trillion. Just think about that. That is $1 trillion spent when they could be making money on taxation.
Nationwide, we would save $41.3 billion every year by ending the war on drugs. We should ask ourselves, who are the real victims of the government's war on drugs?